Howdy, it's me, JR, from West Virginia and Commonplace. I have been going back and forth in my head. I've been watching this crazy whirlwind of stuff that's been happening with the podcast fading. We got a second episode that will be out at some point. But another thing I'm seeing is the crash of podcasts on IG Live. I don't know, what goes on or all the extra setups for IG Live, but I know when I set up for IG Live, it never turned out right, and I did extra stuff with the mics, and then I got shadow banned, extra banned, whatever bans can happen to you. So podcaster to podcaster, podcasting for podcasters with this podcasting episode. What I like to jump in on are these simple things. I'm out here and I podcast. The initial part of doing a podcast was recording the show through Anchor. Sometimes I did it through my phone when I was starting out. Well, not when I was starting out. I always had some type of microphone or something, even if it was just a lavalier type deal or a set of headphones that had a microphone on it. And I recorded that, sent it to Anchor. Anchor put it in the different places. And over time, I developed where I would go to get my analytics, get my prefixes and different things that you got to get from Apple and everybody else. I learned very slow and methodically where to go to get all my information. I didn't rest on my laurels of just what someone was telling me, because every time I did that in life, there would always be a brighter answer, more educated answer that I could find or get. So after that, and after I looked over everything and I learned about the RSS feeds and I learned exactly where your podcast goes, how it goes, and I learned the difference in between being with Anchor and going to another place, because I've did shows over on Buzzsprout for a few weeks, paid for that. Then I learned from other entrepreneurial podcasters that have their own website, how they do their traffic. And everybody has different ways to obtain listeners and monetize popularity and stuff like that. But the one thing that I never did was I never started from an IG Live episode in podcast. I've never taken an IG Live episode and used it as a podcast, which I know that you got to have extra bells and whistles, just like with anything extra you do, to download it and go on with that. But the question that I've always asked myself with these IG Lives, not the Reels, because the Reels are a totally different thing, but with the IG Lives, I've always wondered, what do you truly get out of it? What kind of true fan action do you get? I understand that you get to know exactly who that person is on Instagram, but you already know who those followers are, because 9 times out of 10 they like your stuff. And I understand you genuinely get more, and if you have somebody popular on, all these people come to you at this one time and give you this mass amount of, I call it fandom. And then what happens with it? Because anybody I've asked behind the scenes, they say they don't monetize with it. It really don't do anything to boost them. I mean, I understand it's a social activity, because I see certain people get on there and they do what they do. And then you get your trolls or people like me that I'll pop up for a few seconds just to show support and then I'll disappear, because, I like to listen to a regular podcast. I've got time in my life to do that. But it's just, you got to do your TikTok spread. Sometimes you got to make that video content go across all these other formats that, to me, the IG Live was a waste of time. So to any podcast that does IG Live, no disrespect or anything, hope you stay successful with it, keep going with it, and do what you do. Another thing that bothered me too, and I really dug deep into the whole niching down part of your podcast and finding people to work with that are in your niche. Consolidating all that stuff and doing that stuff is fine and dandy at first, but if you directly go with people in your niche, it turns into a rough spot. It is hard to continuously keep that up and keep that going, because in a sense you're competing against yourself, and if you're competing against yourself, that's where all of this craziness just comes about. And anyway, not to go too deep or anything, and not to just blabber on about that. Another few things that I noticed, with the hashtag game in Instagram, the way that you curate those hashtags if you pull them off the internet or wherever you get them from, if you do them a certain way, it does generate a different type of audience, because that's where I've built in the last few months most of my fan base, because everybody knows that if the shows do very well with me, I run my shows ads continuously. Like, they might get 90 days, 6 months. If it's not a great show, then I'm not rude to it, but I'm not going to invest any more time than the normal 30 days I put into it to see if it's going to do any numbers. If it doesn't do numbers, I usually put it to the wayside. No big deal. But what I go back and do each time, and nobody pays attention to unless it's unique listeners, is I put different hashtags in, and they pull in people from those adjectives, verbs, and nouns. A lot of the adjectives sometimes are what people search for, because certain people are feeling in a certain way. So somebody might feel spunky or something like that. Well, spunky might be one that goes with the Marvel Why Not episode. And next thing you know, there's 20 downloads to that, 100 downloads, whatever it is. And that's how it's formulated and it comes about to me. But those are the things that I do to keep my stuff going. And the thing that I dropped was I was very influential in trying to integrate with everybody, do lives and do all these mass panels. And I found that there's an amazing group of podcasters out there that do those panels, but I'm not one of those. I accepted a lot of things that I'm not in podcasting, and in doing so, it's strengthened my load. And the guests that come now come solely based on what they hear and what quality brings them in. And then lastly, the one thing that just irks me is when you're out here podcasting, and this, like I said, falls in line with just everything that I've been seeing going on as of late. Like, when you're doing your show, the best and greatest promotion you're going to ever do is your own promotion. You cannot worry about your guests. You cannot worry about this person or that person. And you can never worry about your guests bringing star power to your show, because 9 times out of 10, you're bringing a star power to them. Because even with my heavy amount of listeners that I have in certain areas, they will listen to something on my show, but they will tune out to someone else's show. I don't know if that's like a weird thing. So, like, that's why I don't consider myself a draw on anybody else's show, because I'm like, the only thing that I do is I can show you how to promote your stuff in a way that works through the grassroots stuff and other things that are not paid. I mean, I'm not paid. I don't even know what paid is. Not paid promotion. If you want to do paid promotion takes a lot of time and organization that you have to have somebody that can follow through with that 100%. Me personally, I like to see organic, but at some point you do have to do some type of paid advertising. And I'm not talking about paid listeners or paid downloads. That is a totally another topic. I kind of wish that there was an ethical way to stop it, because that's how we're able to tell the difference between the flatliners and the people that are really out here podcasting. So, to the great middle tier independent podcast, keep doing what you're doing, and just remember that it plateaus at some points, and there's highs and there's ups and downs. So just pay attention to your surroundings, pay attention to your followings, and you can just keep going from there. If you don't pay attention to those things and you just lollygag around and think that the same old is going to keep your podcast going, it may keep it going, but it may not make it flourish into other markets and different stuff. But if you're fine where you're at, stay where you're at. Don't take anything that I said in this podcast to heart. But if you don't feel fine with the struggle and where you are, challenge yourself. Figure out why you're not in certain markets. Could it be a guest that could help you get into that market and then you open the rest of the door? Or could it be your branding of your marketing? And the example of that I'm going to give you is this. I say my podcast is for people from the trailer park to $300,000 houses. They could have more money or they could be even poorer. But I'm just saying, as a general demographic, those are the people that I try to attract to West Virginia and Commonplace. And Stacy and I, we both try to bring to the show. And with our guests, we try to get our guests to kind of stay in that parameter, which is a big parameter, basically, that covers the United States makeup, from rural to city to town to metropolis. So, that's the end of this episode. This is JR Sparrow from West Virginia and Commonplace. Definitely go over, subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast on. And wvuncommonplace.com is a place you can go to find out if you need consultant work for you podcasters. And just if you just generally just want to buy some merchandise, something like that, it's all over there. Self-explanatory. And I'm signing off.